Welcome to Wild Turkey Science, a podcast made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow. I'm Dr. Marcus Lashley, Professor of Wildlife Ecology at the University of Florida.
And I'm Dr. Will Goolsby, Professor of Wildlife Ecology and Management at Auburn University. We're both lifelong hunters and devoted scientists who are passionate about hunting, managing, and researching wild turkeys.
In this podcast, we'll explore turkey research, speak to the experts in the field, and address the difficult questions related to wild turkey ecology and management.
Our goal
is to serve as your connection to wild turkey science.
Jason, you seem pretty handy with that fan. Have you crawled around behind it before?
Hey, I'll tell you what, I've done all kinds of things to chase turkeys down.
Whatever it takes.
Yeah, I mean, usually it's headgear, man, because I'm so aerodynamic, I got to slow down sometimes. So I put it up top, you know, a little fan up top, man, and I'm good to go. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I got to get native style.
That's the only reason you're bald, right? You're just shaving so that goes on your head better.
Listen.
I mean, I've heard that you actually have an outstanding head of hair.
I did. If you looked at my pictures before I got married, man, I had hair. And then after that, it fell out. I don't know what to say.
Yeah. You know, that reminds me, I had a video with MSU Deer Lab where we did some phoning cover stuff, and then 5 years later, we did the same thing again, and I basically went from all black, you know, hair and everything to all gray. And one of my favorite comments in that is, "Look how much 5 years made. He must have got married."
Yeah, we're digging holes right now, boys. That's not good.
Yeah. Well, Will's wife actually listens to this, so he has to stay on the download. Mine does not.
Stay in my lane.
Well, you got a good woman then, let me tell you.
I guess so. I mean, if she'll listen to this. every now and then I'll be listening through a draft of an episode or listening back to one, you know, just because we had a real good guest on, and I wanted to, you know, when you have the conversation, you don't pick up as much on it from it as when you listen back to it. And, you know, the kids will invariably be in the truck sometimes when I do that. And they're just like, God, do we have to listen to turkey science again?
Yeah. That's funny.
Well, I'm glad to have you here with us today, Jason. And I think, you know, before I get into trying to fumble through an introduction, I'll let you just introduce yourself if you're willing to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. Once again, appreciate you having me on. Name is Jason Lupardus. A lot of people know me as Loopy or Loop. That's a lot of times I'll be in a crowd of folks that go, "Hey, Loop," and everybody's looking, going, "Well, who's that?" Oh, that's me. So one of my better names from the past, but been on with TFT for almost 6 months. So they're calling me a greenhorn, maybe a Jake. Okay, to TFT. First year, but I'm really like one of those relocated birds. Okay. Because I'm a mature gobbler, and I've been around the block, boys, and I've roosted a lot of places. But now I'm with TFT, and so it's good. I got a background as a wildlife biologist, forester. Did my undergraduate work at UT Knoxville. I bleed orange. I still sit on the Board of Natural Resources there now, the School of Natural Resources. Let me get that correct. Made some changes recently, which was great. But also was able to do my master's degree there in one of those cool critters called Cervus elaphus, Mr. Wapiti. So we did worked on the elk reintroduction up in the Cumberland Mountains, and kind of where I learned how to cut my teeth on big critters, man. So it was good, real good ride. And somehow after that, I got lost down in South Georgia, working for Georgia DNR as a private lands biologist, kind of coordinating all the private land stuff for southern half of Georgia, basically. So spent 6-7 years. I can't remember, man. That's about when I lost my hair. And then jumped from there and got recruited by the National Wild Turkey Federation. And man, had a great time with them. Spent about a decade working for the Turkey Federation. Saw a lot of things go through, and had a good time doing things at a scale. Started as a biologist, kind of worked my way up to director of conservation ops, and Then also did a little development work because somehow I was good at raising money. So did that, and then man, I've just got a history here, but jumped over to the Union Sportsmen's Alliance. It's working with union labor across the United States. Jumped over there as a chief operating officer, managing a lot of members and a lot of large scale projects, and had a good time with that. And then kind of tinkered on the side, did some side work before jumping on board with TFT, which turkeys are my passion, guys. I mean, so I was very excited to see they needed a little help. And so I stepped in and said, hey, let me see what I can bring to the table with a little bit of my conservation background. And let's put this baby on overdrive.
Mm.
Gotcha.
Yeah, it seems like yesterday to me. That's how quick time goes, but it doesn't seem like that long ago when you joined. But I know, you immediately started reaching out and talking to various people and called me. And that was the first time I had interacted with you. But I was really glad to hear TFT was making that step. I'm glad to have you. So I already see things. I think our audience probably has seen a lot of changes already just in that 6 months you've been there.
Well, I appreciate it, man. I'm very excited and I'm super passionate. I'll try not to go too crazy here because I got a lot of juice. My wife says I'm like an Energizer bunny. I just won't stop. So, but no, man, I am very passionate about this, and just seeing where turkeys have been and where turkeys are today. I mean, I'm an avid turkey hunter. Always have been. Grew up in North Alabama where we still really don't have turkeys there. And so it's kind of still in my crawl that we need to fix that, along in many other areas where there's been some issues. And so that's my passion, man. Anytime you can put your passion back into your career, man, it doesn't feel like work. It feels like day to day to me. So, so yeah, I've been reaching out to all the folks that are a heck of a lot smarter in the research arena than me.
And
just,
you also hollered at me, so I appreciate that.
I did, man. I mean, from gobbler to gobbler, I figured to be good, and I tried to call Will the other day, but man, if I could just get him to call me back, it'd be great.
Well, I just figured we'd catch up on the podcast, man.
Yeah,
perfect, man. Perfect.
Well, I mean, that exact thought process actually went through my mind where I was like, I had that written on my whiteboard. I was like, call back Jason. And then, earlier this week, I saw we got you on the calendar. I was like, well, I don't need to call him back. We can just roll it all into one, session. But, what I wanted to ask you, Jason, because really I've been working with this organization since almost day one. I mean, I think Carter reached out when TFT was still just kind of an idea for the first time. And I view your hiring as kind of a turning of the page, an opening of a new chapter. And really seeing TFT with somebody in creating your position and hiring someone to fulfill that role is really taking them from that grassroots organization that they were on day one and really building them into a true player in the NGO field. So I think there was a question somewhere in there, and I don't know exactly what it was, but yeah, can you just talk to us a little bit about that? I mean, how was it that TFT was able to get to this point, and where do you see it heading now in this new era where you guys are starting to actually build a staff to start getting some things done versus relying on all volunteers? Because I know Ron and the rest of the board put a lot of their personal time into this to try to get it to where it is now.
I mean, I'm not going to go into Teddy Roosevelt and talk about blood, sweat, and tears because there's a whole lot of that, and I'm still bleeding a little bit. But we are at a new place, and I feel very honored, very humbled for these guys to say, "Hey, we'd love to have you on board to try to help us." And I look at everybody as just we're just all a big team of folks that share the same passion.
Mm-hmm.
And no doubt this board that originally come together back in 20. They threw some money on the table and said, hey, we want to try to make a difference. And I appreciate them trying to invest in me and to invite me into their flock, right? To see what we can do. And so not much has changed from a grassroots organization, though. I really want to say that we are a grassroots organization, and we're going to be driving efforts from grassroots from here on out. That's something that I see is very strong. And I see our turkey hunters really as the citizen scientists out there. So I'm going to elevate every turkey hunter across America, really North America, that loves this bird and as passionate as I am. That they're really citizen scientists that have brought some things to attention. I mean, I used to sit in a lot of meetings in the past. I was sitting on both the Midwest and the Southeastern Wild Turkey Working Groups, listening to agencies and folks going, "Man, our numbers are going down." And I remember the days sitting in with Chamberlain and Mike Byrne, and when Byrne just kind of come into the mix to discuss, like, hey, how do we bring people together to across the state lines to determine what our issues are? And there's been some issues going on for a while with the turkey decline, and so woo, he's blacked out, folks. He's getting into the dark. Come on back.
What is going on with that thing? It's been
I don't
doing that a
know.
lot here lately.
I mean, I'm not trying to scare you or anything, but
lights out. Lights.
You're the one always
out.
calling me out for being too still, and the lights can't even sense you.
I think it's because I'm cold blooded. That's what it is.
But
it's not emitting enough heat.
but anywho, but we're at a state now where we're trying to stand up the organization. We've had a huge input from folks out there, and so when I come on, what I've been trying to do is just really actively listen to the folks at the meetings, folks that are coming to our events, and just sitting there going, hey, what do you guys want? What can we do to build this organization together? Because if you're going to do a grassroots effort, it's not what I think or what one or two of the board members thinks. It's what the grassroots folks believe in and what they're trying to tackle. And so that has really helped us kind of formulate where we're going in the future. And so one of the first things I did for our board and staff, and I said, hey, we're going to do a SWAT meeting. They're like, what is that? And so basically it's just really trying to get everybody on the same page, just this real alignment moving forward. And so we spent a couple of days together and really just throwing it all out on the table and really bringing that unity and seeing where we drive things. And so it was very eye-opening. And for me coming on, I mean, I'm kind of making that assessment, man. It's like I'm looking at TFT kind of like someone trying to manage for turkeys and going, okay, let's do a habitat assessment and see what the problems are. What are our limiting factors for success? Mm-hmm. Is it brood range? Is it nesting range? Are these birds getting enough food? Do we need to knock off a predator too? What do we need to do to fix the issue? So I've been very fortunate to get that kind of outside perspective coming in and to try to help us move forward and bring those to the attention of the board and go, hey, this is where we're going. So, in a nutshell, in the last few months, we've kind of built out our first budget. We have some things planned for 24 and beyond. A business plan that's coming together. That's a 1, 3, and a 5-year business plan. And that's really all about how do we do more for turkeys. And so we have some even changes in nomenclature and things we're going to work on. And so something you're going to hear from me a ton and everyone with TFT around the corner. We're going to release some things in early February. We have a February partners meeting coming up, and they're going to be the first ones to hear about, what our future looks like and what's going on. And then we'll start releasing some media. But we're going to have a year-long campaign that's going to be focused on the bird we love. And so we'll have a great slogan that we already have together. We've already started doing some filming to kind of help with that. We have a bunch of different companies that are stepping up to the plate that want to be involved in new partnerships that we did not have in the past. And so guys, it's just a super exciting time to see where we're going. But ultimately, you're going to hear us say a lot about we're here to save turkeys using what I love, science-based solutions for long-term sustainability. Mm-hmm. You're going to hear that over and over and over again because basically that's what we're here for. And we're going to do whatever it takes to help you guys figure out what the issues are today, tomorrow, so that we can have those thriving bird populations so that we never have a silent spring again. I mean, that's a big one for me. There's places I've been that, man, I used to hear birds and I've traveled all across the U.S., okay, chasing the spring. And A lot of times it's just to be out with others, giving people an opportunity. And I never harvest a bird. It's just the experience. And there's a lot of places that I used to go to, and it's different. And we all don't know what the exact answer is, but man, I just feel very honored and proud to work with folks like y'all in the dark to try to drive these things at a larger scale than we've ever seen. And you guys know this. I don't know if all of the listeners out there that listen and watch this know, but there's more work going on in the turkey arena right now than there ever has been.
Mm-hmm.
And I never thought that would happen. And man, that makes me really excited. Like, whoa, our folks, like the turkey hunter, citizen scientists, they are here saying we want to help. And so thank you guys for being here and doing what you do, because it's so important. And being able to kind of break down the science so that everyone can digest it. Fantastic, guys. Y'all doing a great job. And thanks for everyone that you bring on to do that. So yeah, that's kind of where we're heading in the future, all because of the things that you guys are doing and how we can help you move forward.
Yeah, well, Jason, I'd like to add, I appreciate it, but also thanks for the support. We wouldn't have been able to start this podcast or continue it into 2024 without you guys, and we both are very thankful for that. I know Will has had to devote more time than I promised him up front to it, but he
pays me in cookies for it.
Yeah, I came up there and helped him kill a big old gobbler last year.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Oh man!
Yeah, I actually just watched it. That's
you sitting there real quiet and still 30 yards from me really helped that bird come in.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness.
It was just his magnetic energy.
I tell you what, for whatever reason, wherever I sit, gobblers show up. So I don't know if that's me. Man, that's as cheesy as it gets right there.
There was no arrogance in that statement whatsoever.
Oh, man.
No. Well, it's also not true.
Hey Marcus, I got some nice public land we can try out.
yeah, there you go.
We can try that on some really pressured birds. See how it works out.
Yeah, well, I'm happy to try.
No, we travel, and if you need help, I may not be able to help you, but I know some people that can.
Yeah. Well, I'm kind of like you are. I like being there. It's hearing them gobble. Particularly when I was in North Carolina, I got to take quite a few people on their first ever turkey hunt, and I like seeing people's eyes light up.
Oh man, it's the best, man. So, I mean, I could tell story after story, but I love the spring. I love chasing spring. I mean, I'll admit this. I'm gonna throw out my man card here, but I'm a flower kind of guy. All right, so spring flowers, man, I just dig them. And there's something pretty special about that.
I like to call those forbs.
Yes, they are great forbs. And I like looking in the crop later and go, oh yeah, that's a great place to find that bird next time. And so, but yeah, man, there's just something pretty special. I mean, I remember I've taken a lot of folks on hunts, groups, individuals. We filmed hunts in the past, and they're all special to me, man. And I've had some, like tear-jerking moments, in the woods, and we never harvested a bird. Some mornings we never heard a bird. But what I call it is we were changing people's lives, giving them an opportunity to make a memory that lasts for a lifetime. And man, I wouldn't change that for the world. And so there's folks I still connect with over the years. I remember taking out, I'll tell one quick story because I'm a storyteller. I remember taking out a young lady named Katie years ago. And ended up, I was like, hey, I'm gonna get some folks out on a turkey hunt. And long story short, ended up being, we did a hunt with, I think it was 8 or 9 young ladies and 2 boys. None of them really turkey hunted. And literally, we're going to film a part of a hunt and do stuff. And, long story short, man, I'm out with Katie, and her granddad came out like, hey, I want to be a part of this hunt. I'm like, fantastic. I want you there. And you know how it is, man. You ever put a camera on a hunt and, man, your luck goes, boom. It makes it hard.
Mhm.
But we had Mother Nature throw us a curveball as well, where we had one of those cold fronts literally the night before come through. I had birds located everywhere. I'm like, you're here, you're here. You know, I'm in
Mm.
coordinating mode, like, man, this is going to be great. We're going to have a lot of smiles. And look, we went out that morning. We didn't really hear anything, and hunted hard the next day. It was like, oh, man, we tried to get on a bird, and it just didn't work. But anywho, we're sitting in the woods on a big old white oak, and we're talking. Cameraman's behind us, and big granddad, big old guy. You know, those guys that have those, like logger hands. You know, it's like the size of 3 of my fingers. And he just kind of grabs me on the shoulder, and he's like, "Son, I appreciate it." And I was like, "Okay, yeah." I wore him out. I'm like, "Oh, are you what's going on?" But literally, he kind of grabbed my shoulder and he said, "Hey, today's pretty special to us." And I was like, "Okay, all right, go on." And so he was like, "Well, hey, this is the day that Katie's younger sister died of cancer." So,
Mhm.
man, I was just like, "Okay." And so we're sitting there, and this big dude, man, super great individual. I mean, he just breaks down in tears, and of course she's crying. I'm bawling. The cameraman's like shaking, going, "Oh man," And I mean, we're sharing a moment, man. I mean, we're out in the woods, and it's just special. It was really nothing about the turkey hunt; is bringing people together.
Mhm.
And he said, "Hey, this is really the first time our families come together," and he's like, "I really appreciate you doing this." And I was like, "Whoa," and it hit my heart, man. And man, when I drove home that next day, I'll be honest with you, I was going down the road trying to talk to my wife about it, man. I was bawling like a little baby for like an
Mm.
hour. This is down in Tennessee, actually, and it's pretty special. And that same young lady, I mean, we're still like Facebook friends, and now she's older and married. And anyway, that was years ago, but man, I have all these stories over time that revolved around the spring and the wild turkey.
Mm.
And man, I will never want to change that in the future. And I want to make sure that we can all continue to have those moments with others. Um, that's a big passion of mine. I don't care if it's a kid or adult or whatever. I mean, I could talk about my daughter's first hunt like 1,000 times, but man, there are so many of those kind of experiences. And man, it just drives my passion even harder, knowing that we have that opportunity to touch somebody's life and really change it. Man, it's fantastic. Um,
Mhm.
so it's a lot about what TFT is interested in doing. We want to have birds. As Jolly always said, you got to be present to win, right? Well, we got to have birds there to win, right?
Mhm.
That's a part of that moment on every hunt. So, yep.
Oh, that's good stuff. And
Yeah.
you know, I don't know how how to follow up that, but you talked about trying to ensure that we continue to have the opportunity to take advantage of those opportunities going forward. And I just wonder, as long as you have been working in this arena, what do you see as kind of some of the major challenges to doing what we need to do for the wild turkey?
Man, that's huge. I'm gonna say number one, maybe awareness. Is huge. And I think things like we're doing today and what you guys are working on throughout the years um, really delivering the things that used to be on the bookshelf, like a couple of my theses over here that no one really ever reads unless you're a
Mm.
researcher, right? But trying to get that science out so that the average day person can utilize it, whether that be a wildlife manager on a state land, someone on the federal level, or more importantly, here in the eastern United States, someone on private land. I mean, we know that the majority of the eastern
Mm.
U.S. is privately owned, and there's a lot of folks that just don't understand how to really manage for turkeys and really other species sometimes
Hmm.
um, until you get out there with them. I mean, I know when I worked down in Georgia with private landowners, it was just always somebody asking, "Hey, what's the next step? What can I do? Forest management, habitat stuff, fields, breed range." And I was out with some guys just the other day, and we're talking about growing ragweed. They're like, why you want to grow ragweed?
I
You
hate
know, and
ragweed.
Yeah, I hate ragweed. I'm like, oh no, and then I'm talking about disking timing and all these other things, and they're like, whoa, mind blown. But a lot of folks just aren't getting that day to day, and so some of it's, I think some of the biggest issues in the turkey arena is, hey, we don't understand. Number one, we don't understand what the turkey population is.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of a guesstimate. We can all agree upon that. We don't understand harvest trends, but no one's tackled that. There's a lot of folks like yourselves that's trying to work on that. That's a big issue. We know that birds may have already superseded carrying capacity, and if we look across the United States, the overall numbers are in a very slow decline overall. That's just a fact. So what do we do to address that? Are we going to be comfortable one day where there's maybe one bird per county? I don't know. Or are we going to try to be very proactive to jump in and say, hey, we're not going to let that happen? And what do we have to do not to have those silent mornings, those silent springs? So that's some of it. But habitat awareness, I mean, we could go into the greater scale of like, man, we're still growing as a population out there. We have a ton of great green space that's disappearing every day. We're losing land. So we have to think about, how do we mitigate that? How do we have those travel corridors? How are we looking at things at scale? And so this is kind of perfect timing for me to just throw in that, one of the things that we're going to try to address, and we're really standing up this coming year, is going to be around private lands and working at more private lands cooperatives to try to address these issues. And I say this because, man, working with landowners and seeing where you can almost create an incubator, where you can incubate a population, so to speak, and basically have impacts on all the surrounding properties, and knowing that birds are landscape level species, right? They're not going to sit on your 10 acres every day unless you got them trapped in. I mean, so the average landowner may only, depending on where we are, that bird may be covering 10, 20 different properties. And so how do we address that correctly and really make that a focus? And I couldn't think of a better place to go than our citizen scientists, turkey hunters that are out there, where they're on the lease, they own the property, whatever, on private lands, and get people to think the same way and go, hey, what can we address from a habitat standpoint? What can we address on next steps after we got habitat in place to really start bolstering populations? Maybe that is some selective trapping, et cetera. We have to be comfortable having those conversations and taking those steps. And of course, we're also looking at something more in the I'd say wetland bottomland areas where we know there's been, hydrology is hard to manage, and sometimes it's impossible to manage, right? Mother Nature is going to give it to you or not. And so we're trying to look at some things down in the delta bottoms and really throughout the southeast of how do we address these bottomland areas to best manage and come up with some solutions, science-based solutions to get people managing those places correctly, especially those that are maybe enrolled in some of the governmental programs that haven't been touched. So you'll see a lot of information coming from us. We're going to be working with Five Oaks over in Arkansas really closely on a really large scale project, something that this organization would have never thought about, that's going to have impacts on potentially up to 1 million acres. And so it's pretty exciting time, and we're going to do whatever we can to get more done.
Good stuff.
Yeah. Well, I know we talked about it before the show, Jason. I thought, listening to you talk about some of those ideas and directions, one thing that I have been seeing happening from the outside is you seem to be pretty aggressively opening chapters across quite a few states. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like and how it's factoring into the organization?
Absolutely, man. I tell you, this is a real grassroots effort, and we're trying to address scalability right now. But we have folks, they're just reaching out to us across the United States right now, going, "How can we help?" And I think because of chapter systems being in place, with many organizations out there, people are very familiar with that. Turkeys for Tomorrow didn't really get started up to go, hey, we're going to do a membership system and have chapters. That was really not the goal. It's like, hey, how can we get as much money and awareness out to help turkeys immediately? But what we found is people were like, well, hey, can I be a member? How can I help? And so they developed like a membership database, right? And so that's some of the things I've been working on to try to make that a little bit easier for folks to come in, join us, and see how we can get them plugged in. So last year, I stepped on board, and things were already in motion. And what we saw is we had a few events going on. We had a handful of chapters, and that went to 10 chapters to 15 chapters. And today we have about 21 established chapters, and we're starting to do events to fundraise and do things a little differently. We're kind of taking a blended approach for events, where we're not just telling folks, hey, you must do this kind of fundraising event. What we want to do is bring people together for a common cause, the common good, right? The birds we love. It's all for turkeys. So we're encouraging folks to come together, have some fun. Maybe it's a pint night. Maybe we're going to have a little bit of bourbon tasting. Maybe we're just going to have a cookout, right? And talk a little shop. I mean, that's what I like to do. I mean, people usually come together over good food, fellowship, making it happen. And so we're kind of taking a really soft approach to kind of build the strength of communities. And so we tested that out this past year. Seems to be a really good recipe. And what we saw was really big turnouts where we thought maybe we might have 10, 20, 30 people. We're seeing 100, 150 people show up just for a social event. And so that tells me there's a lot of interest. There are folks out there that really want to do something and help. And then after we've brought them together and they start talking, they're like, hey, we want to do a bigger event. Well, absolutely. We'll support you with that. And so that's evolved to those next steps. So it's a very soft approach. But we're seeing a lot of 20, 30, 40-year-olds that are very engaged and wanting to help. I was with somebody 2 days ago, and they're like, hey, I want to get some hands-on work done. I'm like, hey, I'd love to try to help, get some of that going. And so I love this grassroots and people just putting their passion out there going, what can we do to help you guys? And it's, it's so humbling. I'm telling you, it's so humbling.
So y'all
still
are
in the dark, dude.
I mean, somebody changed his timer on there to like 5 minutes. It used to be just a couple times an episode when he'd sit still, but I guess you've really captivated him on this one.
Lights out.
Banquets, fundraisers, all that good stuff. These are things that almost all of our conservation nonprofits do. But one thing that I wanted to give you a little bit of time to talk about, and I was going to say put you on the spot on, but I'm sure it's not putting you on the spot because you get this question all the time. But what is it about, TFT versus other conservation nonprofits that you would say makes y'all unique or, worthy of their time, attention, and money?
Absolutely, man. We're looking for time, talents, and treasures, and folks that want to give that love turkeys. We're a conservation-based 501c3 nonprofit, right? Just like the other ones. However, we're very focused on the mission. There is zero mission drift. We're not doing something just to bring in money. If it's not for turkeys, we don't want to do it. Bottom line. And so there's a lot of things that we're getting offers to do and requests and we're just putting a line in the sand going, you know what, if it's not going to benefit turkeys, I'm not interested. And that's inclusive of partnerships, efforts, you name it. And that's a hard line to drive, especially you're a young organization and you're trying to build capacity, you're trying to build some funding so that we can stabilize and have guys and gals out there that really want to help and to try to support folks like you. But I'm willing to turn people down on transactional kind of items as opposed to building real relationships built on values that I share, that our organization shares with them. And that's critical to us. So that's one of the big focuses. We have zero mission drift. And I won't go into many details there, but you can dissect other groups, and some have drift all over the place. And they may not be focused on exactly what they're wanting to do because some get caught up in chasing the dollars. And we're not going to chase dollars. We're chasing more turkeys. I mean, I want to have more great springs out there. And what do we need to do to have that? That's going to be critically important. The other thing that some groups aren't addressing like we're wanting to do moving forward is some folks just really want to do work on public ground. And I'm not saying doing work on public ground is bad, because, man, I've done a ton of it. I've managed some of the biggest projects that you can imagine and did really cool things. But no one here in the eastern U.S., especially, that's primarily privately owned, how can we impact private landowners? And so we want to be a voice for the private landowners and really stand up and see how we bring people together for solutions. I'm all about, you got a problem with turkeys? Let's come out. Let's address it. Let's come up with a solution. Let's fix the issue. Let's have turkeys again, guys. And so a lot of people don't understand that, so that's a big focus for us. I think it's going to be much different than others. And then also for an upland species, where most people say, turkeys are an upland species. Well, I don't know about y'all, but I've spent a lot of time in the swamp, especially down in Southwest Georgia and Florida and other states where, man, I'm trudging water. I mean, I got birds strutting through the water, wing tipping. If you ain't seen one wing tip over the water, you are missing out on life. I'm going to tell you right now. It is fantastic. And that gobble over the water is just like, woo, it echoes. Man, I get chills thinking about it. But I know these bottomlands are so freaking important. And so we have to address that. We have to be willing to, roll up our pants and get a little bit wet, and what we're going to do is going to have great impacts on waterfowl and entire guilds of other species. And we're willing to do that along with upland work, but we're also going to jump down into the water to do that. And last but not least, and this is something, man, it's been in my crawl for a long time. I worked in Georgia. We talked a lot about, managing at all scales, right? And so, the first thing is we're going to build the habitat foundation. I mean, it's going to be great. Do everything you can to have the best habitat possible. But then what's next? How can you boost that population next? And so, I mean, when I was working with a ton of folks managing for quail, I mean, we're looking at, well, how do we remove a few predators? Or, what does real supplemental feeding look like as opposed to baiting, right? Or just putting a corn pile down, and by growing the correct food out there. So there's all these other steps that can be made that can change a population dynamic. The quail arena, we talk to folks about, hey, if I can get you out there trapping 2 to 3 weeks out of the year at this time of year, I can usually see a bump of 10 to 15% in the quail population. I mean, that's stuff from Tall Timbers, from the Albany Quail Project, et cetera. And these quail managers, I mean, they're serious about it. And so, but what we also saw is a lot of impacts on turkeys down there years ago. And so I still have all this knowledge, like, we're going to be really comfortable talking about trapping, talking about managing predators as just another tool. Now, is it the magic bullet? Heck no, it's not. It's not. But if we're doing everything together, we might change some predator-prey dynamics and get some populations on some intrinsic growth again. I have a lot of crazy ideas, and just, maybe beer, bourbon discussions with folks like y'all. And there's a lot of folks out there talking about, hey, how do we address things? How do we change some of the predator-prey dynamics? I mean, we're not talking about cotton rats with quail right now, but it's really interesting to note there's so many other species that are involved when we start looking at managing for a bird like a wild turkey at a scale that can have impacts on those populations. And so we're willing to put a line in the sand to talk about it, where others are kind of scared to talk about some of the trapping and like predator removal. And that's okay. But we're going to be real comfortable talking about it, and we're going to put the science behind it. And that's what's great. We want to encourage to have more of the research done that really kind of helps put some proof to the pudding. I mean, man, we're just getting a ton of people reaching out going, hey, I've been really managing my woods and fields for a long time, but now I've been trapping for 2 or 3 years, and man, I'm seeing birds again, or man, I got quail whistling again. And it's really, it's invigorating to me. I'm like, man, that's some of the same things I used to preach, when I'm out there working with landowners one-on-one. And so we're going to stand some ground there, and it may be a little different than others, but we're very comfortable talking about it.
I think one thing that out of your previous several minutes of conversation that is resonating with me, because I kind of take the same approach even from running my shop. A lot of turkeys in the South live on private land, and I have really tried to focus on solutions that people can implement on private land as part of my program. I know you guys do the same kind of stuff. But the thing that I think is challenging with turkeys is that they are operating at such a large scale relative to the landowners, like you said earlier, and there really hasn't been a cohesive effort, I guess, to try to get land management cooperatives together, like there have been with other things. Like we've been really active for a while trying to get deer management cooperatives together. A lot of people have worked on that in a lot of places and to a great degree of success. I have been involved in quite a bit of research and outreach related to fire and developing some sort of fire management cooperative and or uh, you know what's the other uh,
like a prescribed burners association.
yeah, prescribed
Yeah.
burn associations, those kinds of things where people in the community come together and share resources to get things done. And that I think is something that we need to manage wild turkeys, especially in the South. And it's not really even thought of usually. That I'm glad to hear you talk about that and that's part of the vision because I think it is critical. If we're going to move the needle with turkeys, it's going to be on private land down here. And in order for us to operate at a scale that's meaningful, it's going to take a lot of landowners coming together to do that.
Absolutely, man. We've thought about it. It's on paper, and it's something we're going to be driving. And we'll have some steps. We're going to look at trying to do more of those interactive field days, and there'll be
Mm-hmm.
some other approaches to try to bring people together locally, and maybe test those waters. And so, I think there's going to be some opportunities even to kind of look at that, from a research perspective as well, to see how well that could work. Tried and true, and I agree. I mean, no doubt I took that play out of the QDMA playbook. I was like, man, that was a great play in the past, and
Mm-hmm.
and and I worked with a lot of those kind of cooperatives for quote unquote for deer in the past, and so it makes sense. And man, we know birds are all over the place, and we have to look at that at a bigger scale. And I really feel in my heart that if we can get some of these things going and have, I'm gonna say incubators again. I know I relate everything to the turkey, right? But it's the truth. I think if we have these source populations, they're going to help feed everyone around them, and ultimately, over time, we could really have some what I would call is scalable differences if managed well. And so maybe this is a little bit of theory going out there, right? But we're going to test it out. But if we're not trying, boys, we die. And I live by those words. So we're going to have to keep going at it and doing everything we can to make a difference.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's good stuff, and especially now that coincides with several states that we've even talked to on this show about launching these private lands habitat initiatives. There's more and more states that are using various sources of monies to try to fund that work. But yeah, I mean, I think it really seems like what y'all are focusing on is the research and then trying to empower landowners with knowledge and potentially even some kind of help, even if y'all end up being a pass through for some of the federal funding or things along those lines for habitat management on private lands. Do you think that's accurate, that those are kind of y'all's two big foci
Absolutely, man.
for this organization?
Mean, you nailed it. I'll put the words out again. We're going to save turkeys using science-based solutions
Yeah.
for long-term sustainability. And I mean, that's it. I mean, we're taking the science, we're coming up with solutions, and we're hoping to have long-term sustainability from it. I mean, it's really basic to me. And I think our board and our staff are coming up with those key words a while back when I put them through a field day of SWAT, and we come away with some great takeaways. And everybody's like, "Man, that's great." And I'm like, "Yeah, we're going to talk about that for the next few years."
Yeah.
So yeah, man, you're spot on, Will.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think that's one of the things, just kind of as a general commentary, that all of us as biologists have kind of always just run into this wall that is, conserving wildlife on private lands. It's just always been such a challenge, but I am a little bit optimistic now that I see organizations like TFT and I see state agencies launching initiatives to focus on that. We're doing research to try to inform that process. What does it need to look like? How do we need to do it? And then we're getting information out now more effectively, I think, than we ever have with, podcasts and social media and all that stuff to try to get that information in people's hands. So I feel like, maybe we've actually gotten to that point where, as biologists, a lot of times in the past, we just threw up our hands about like this animal lives 98% on private land, but there's not a whole lot we can do about it. But now, maybe the tide is finally turning in that regard. I'm optimistic, at least.
Brother, I am too. Thank you for having a full cup with me, because that's how we make a difference, man. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and complain about things. Let's come up with some solutions. Let's fix it. Let's make it better. I mean, that's my driver every day.
Yeah, I mean, there's enough smart people involved in this. Not us, or not me, anyways. I won't speak for y'all. But there's enough smart people involved in this, and there's enough people that want to put skin in the game, that I feel like we can actually start to move the ball on it. And I don't, I think a lot about the parallels between the turkey decline and the quail decline that we saw decades ago. And I wonder if they were in the situation that we're in now, could they have slowed the bleeding or even stopped the bleeding and reversed it? Because when all that was occurring, we didn't have all the tools and all the knowledge that we have now.
No, I agree, man.
I think I may have said something along these lines before on the show, but I'll say it again. I think the quail is a good example of we're just one generation away. Right. And what I mean by that is right now, I go out and do it, and you guys do too, I'm sure, where I go meet with a landowner and they are accustomed in their lifetime to having turkeys on the property and gobbling, and they know what that's like. And not having that isn't acceptable. But the first generation that doesn't have it, it's become normal to not have them. And I think we have seen that turnover in quail, where the last generation that had quail, it wasn't acceptable not to have them, but now it's just normal not to have them, and we don't want to get in that shape with turkeys. I think the time is now to make sure that we don't end up in that shape, because we don't want it to be normal to not have them.
Yeah, I mean, I think, Marcus, that's a really good point, and it seems strange to say it, but I think the only thing worse than losing a species is, or almost, functionally losing those numbers, is losing the hunters too, that pursue that species, because the hunters are the ones that have that, investment in conserving the species long term. So, I think
that's when
on.
things really go south.
Yeah.
For the species. It's not the initial declines. It's when the interest in it, in turning that around or conserving it, goes away too.
Absolutely.
And that's just a generation away.
Yeah, we have to be stewards of the land, but we have to be stewards of the people. I mean, so we all have to be active leaders to keep driving the passion, love for the outdoors by, hey, we're going to get some more folks out and continue this long tradition of, going out there and enjoying those springs. And in some cases, if you're a fall turkey hunter, enjoying a great fall turkey hunt too. So with a lot of things going on out there across the nation and several of the states, I mean, the fall turkey hunt has kind of fallen off over time. And it's much different, but it's pretty interesting. I mean, I've had some fall turkey hunts where there's active gobbling and strutting and the whole 9 yards, and it's just as exciting, So it's one of those things that we don't want to continue to lose ground as advocates for hunting, because if we do, there's going to be less and less of it. So we have to come together and not be further divided over preferences and things like that. It needs to be like, hey, we all care, and what can we do to work together to solve this issue?
Yeah. I think one of the things Marcus and I have discussed several times on this show, but I don't think we're quite at the point of belaboring yet, so I'll go ahead and mention again, is that we have both worked a considerable amount in the deer world in the past and continue to do so in some capacity, although both of us have heavily shifted all of our research focus and attention towards turkeys for obvious reasons. But we're just encouraged by how much of a conservation ethic, a lot of these turkey hunters that we interact with, either through this show or other, speaking engagements and things like that, how much of a conservation effort or ethic that they exhibit. They're willing to do things that sometimes personally impact them, if it's better, for the sustainability of the resource.
Absolutely, man. That's fantastic. I've heard so many stories like, well, I only had one bird gobbling on my property, and I went out and worked the bird, but I'm never going to pull the trigger on him because I need more turkeys, right? Or hey, I could have mowed this, but I stopped because I knew it could have impacted the nest. I mean, I hear of all kinds of things out there with people telling stories. Like everywhere I go, I was with a gentleman just a few days ago, actually down in Florida, saying some of the very same things to me about how he's trying to better manage just for turkeys, Osceolas. And so it's man, that right there to me, man, it just puts more fire in my gut to go, all right, man, we have so many good people out there. And I'm going to continue to call them the citizen scientists because they are. I mean, these turkey hunters, I mean, some of these folks, they may not have a degree in biology or PhD or any of that stuff, but I tell you what, a lot of them are really good woods folks and they care. And I'll have them at my table any day of the week.
Agreed.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I've talked to a number, of turkey enthusiasts that, when it comes down to managing for turkeys, they know more than most of the biologists that I talk to, I mean, because it drives their every thought. So.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You're spot on. Spot on.
Yeah. Well, another thing that I just want to circle back, I was thinking about it while you guys were talking, that not only do we have those people and we need those people, but we also need a new generation of those people. So, get your kids involved, take kids hunting. I think, us continuing to focus on sustainability, over time, it's going to require that we do those kinds of things. We have those kinds of, initiatives to make sure that we're doing what we can now and that we are setting the table to make sure it continues in the future.
Agreed.
Absolutely.
I mean, you said it again. You said my other S word. I mean, sustainability. Man, I love it. Thanks for. I didn't even have to prompt you. That's great.
Well, Will, I know you got a bum knee over there, and you got to take care of some business.
Well, the first thing that I did when I talked to the doctor this morning is I said, "How long till I have full mobility back?" And he told me in weeks, and I started thinking about turkey season. I was like, okay,
are we talking about like 8 weeks or 12?
Yeah, like I didn't have, if I had waited, a couple more weeks to jack up my knee, I'd have been, in trouble when turkey season came around. So I went ahead and got that accident out of the way.
We'd have left you at the truck.
Hey. I feel you, brother. Missing a season is hard. I busted my Achilles last year and did not get to really turkey hunt like I typically do. And really got out with a friend at the end of season and just kind of taking it easy. But man, it hurt me.
Yeah,
not being able to get out. So I feel for you. I hope you heal up quick, man.
Yeah, I appreciate it.
Well, Jason, we appreciate you taking time. It's been really fun talking to you and hearing, what the vision is. Is there anything else that you want to say or leave the audience with to think about?
Well, come see us. We'd love to have you at one of our events. Get online, check our website out, turkeysfortomorrow.org. You're seeing us very prominently on social media and all the media platforms, and we just appreciate your support. We appreciate you guys and everything that you're doing. If I haven't said that enough, I'm going to say it again because it means a lot. I mean, as a fellow biologist, and it takes everyone coming together and crossing the line sometimes. And sometimes we have to have those courageous conversations to make a difference. So thank you for what you're doing each day. And on behalf of TFT and our board and all of our members out there, we just appreciate you. So come join us. Come see us at an event this year. We're going to have a good time. And, hey, buckle up your boots because turkey season's around the corner.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Appreciate it, Jason, and appreciate all your support too from the support coming from TFT to us.
Yeah, we really appreciate it. And I just want to remind everybody out there, we do have the website linked in the show notes every episode, so it's easy for you to get. And I think on this one, we'll put some contact information even for you, Jason, if people want to reach out and share their thoughts or get more information or any of that. I also want to remind y'all out there, if you hadn't had a chance to take the quick survey, go ahead and do that. Guys, I got a sneak peek of that. It's a little bit overwhelming.
It is a little bit overwhelming.
I mean, the acreage.
There's a lot of good feedback.
The acreage being impacted by the listenership is pretty unbelievable, just from the people that have filled it out so far. And
it's astronomical.
The comments, I think I said to Will the other day, I was like, well, we've got about 13 years of content now. It was like, there's so many good ideas in it. It took me probably an hour to go down through them.
Yeah.
Just like to read the comments on what people want to hear about.
Yeah.
And
mostly they want more of my jokes.
I wasn't going to say anything.
This is where I fade out, boys. That's rough.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks everybody out there that has participated, and if you hadn't had a chance, take a moment to help us out to make sure we're talking about what you want and we can help turkeys. And Jason, we really appreciate it. Can't say that enough. We would never have been able to do this without you guys, and we are grateful for it.
Thank you, guys. Thanks for having us on today.
Yeah, appreciate it, Jason.
Thanks, everybody.
Wild Turkey Science is part of the Natural Resources University podcast network and is made possible by Turkeys for Tomorrow, a grassroots organization dedicated to the wild turkey. To learn more about TFT, check out turkeysfortomorrow.org.